Okay, I believe we're ready to begin.
Yes, good afternoon. Before we begin our agenda, we will have a presentation by Joel Alvarez and Erica Maurer on the New York City Population FactFinder.
And as an introduction, I'll just note that City Planning has been working on a whole series of different e-tools that bring transparency to public data that's already out there, but that is lodged in different agencies and different PDFs. And this is important to us as planners, but I'd say even more importantly, it empowers communities. We have found that council members, community boards, borough presidents are keen users of these tools, and this is probably the single most challenging tool that we've yet to develop.
Thank you. So I think Jeff is making a switch. Here we are. Okay. Welcome to this New York City Population FactFinder demonstration. I'm Joel Alvarez. I'm here with Erica Moore. We're both demographers with the Population Division here at City Planning, and we're co-creators of this application. So what is this application? It's an easy way for community groups or planners and really everyday New Yorkers to find detailed population characteristics for their neighborhoods or other areas of interest. So users can simply type an address or outline the places they're looking for, click a button, and then explore a comprehensive set of population profiles for that area. We redeveloped the application here at City Planning, and it now includes features like a fast, intuitive design, expanded content so you can get things like detailed languages spoken at home and places of birth, change over time for all statistics, data visualizations, shareable links so you can save and share your work with others. And all of this was built using open source coding, so the whole process is transparently documented. Are you able to follow along? Is it coming up? Okay, yeah, okay. So these features were developed incorporating user feedback and cumulatively gives us a product unparalleled in the public sector. So today, Erica will tell you more about all of these great features. But first, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the data that power this application, the geographies that we use to build study areas, and the data limitations that we address head-on. All of our data come from two Census Bureau programs, the full count decennial censuses from 2000 and 2010, and the American Community Survey, or ACS. The decennial data are the gold standard in population statistics. They're the benchmark on which we build our understanding of all other population data. However, these data are limited to only a few variables, things like age, race, housing tenure, and overall population, and not much beyond that. And a second major limitation is that the decennial censuses are only conducted every 10 years. So the information can get outdated rather quickly, where in 2018, the last decennial census was in 2010. The American Community Survey data, on the other hand, come out every year and cover a wide range of topics, things like poverty, rent, and health insurance coverage. Unfortunately, ACS data are not always so dependable because they come from a survey. And so what we do with Population FactFinder is we gray out all information with questionable reliability so users can have confidence in all of the data that they report upon. Pardon me. With Population FactFinder, we give you 4 different geographies to choose from. Close approximations of community districts called PUMAs. So right there, PUMAs. Neighborhood tabulation areas, which are close approximations of New York City neighborhoods. Census tracts, and our smallest unit of analysis, census blocks. And we have about 40,000 of them across the city, and each block has an average population of about 300. And all of these geographies nest perfectly within each other. So PUMAs are composed of neighborhood tabulation areas. Neighborhood tabulation areas can be built out of census tracts, and census tracts are formed out of census blocks. And so with this understanding of our geographies, our data sources, and our data limitations, let me now link to New York City Population FactFinder and hand it over to Erica Moore.
Thanks, Joel. So now I'm going to walk you through the application itself so you can see how to use it. This is our initial view, our map view. And with this, you have the 4 geographies that Joel just mentioned. You have census blocks, census tracts, neighborhoods, or NTAs, and PUMAs. So I'm going to start on census tract geographies, and we can build a study area from here. And with this application, you can either select a single geography or you can select multiple geographies. And there's a few ways of selecting it, so I'll walk you through each of those. I'm going to start by searching for an address, because usually when you're looking for a place and the characteristics of it, you know an address to start with. So I'm going to start with 120 Broadway, where we are right now. And you'll see as you're typing in the address bar, your address pops up over in this list, and you can click that and it zooms right to the address. So with that, I'm going to select a single census tract, and I'm going to click on View Profile. Okay. So now we're in the profile view, and you'll see here there's different tabs on top with the data. And the first one is the decennial census tab. This has all of the data that Joel is mentioning from the decennial census. And then we have 4 tabs from the American Community Survey. So we have demographic, social, economic, and housing. And each of these include variables for each of those profiles. The demographic profile we can start with starts with age and sex and race, the basic characteristics of an area. So you'll see as we scroll down, you have your selected area and a comparison area, and the default in this application is New York City. And you can see as we're going down, there's a lot of gray values. And as Joel mentioned, we gray out unreliable data. So with this, you can use a statistic that is in black. So for instance, percent 65 and over, you can report that this census tract has 2.2% 65 years and over population. Or you can turn to the census tab to use full count data, which has no question of reliability. Or you can go back to the map by either clicking on this map icon or this icon over here to build a larger study area to increase your sample and your population of that area to get more reliable data. So with that, I'm going to actually unclick the census tract and show you a few other ways that you can build the study area. So I'm going to click on the radius tool and click on the dot that's still on the map from 120 Broadway and build about a 1/4 mile radius. So with that, every intersecting tract gets selected. You can also build a polygon to select tracts. This also works for each of the other geographies as well. So you can also click to deselect a tract to customize your area if your polygon or radius included areas that you didn't want included, or if you wanted to build beyond that. So now that I have more census tracts selected, I'm going to go back to view the profile. And you'll see now as I'm scrolling down, most of the data are in black. And you'll notice as I'm going down, there's charts on the right-hand side. This is a quick visualization so that you can make a comparison between your area and the comparison area, so in this case, New York City. So you'll see in this area, the blue is your selected area, and the dot is the comparison area, and each of them have margin of error bar. So a little bit of, on the blue, you can see the reliability data included. So you can make a judgment here that the white non-Hispanic population is greater in this lower Manhattan area than for the New York City average. You can also, if you wanted to study the reliability data, you can turn that on to see more advanced statistics. You can also switch to additional profiles. So we can go over to the social profile now. And with the drop-down menu on each of these tabs, you can actually see the categories that are included in each of these profiles so that you don't have to scroll all the way to the bottom of the list to find language spoken at home. So I'm gonna actually jump down to place of birth, and it brings you down to that part of the page. And you can see here that there's about 30% foreign born in this area compared to 37% in New York City. We also have two columns on the right-hand side that are showing the difference between your selected area and comparison area. So you can see that there's about a 7.5 percentage point difference between these two areas. You can also change your comparison area. So if you wanted to go back to the top, and you can switch it to any of the boroughs, neighborhoods, or Pumas. So we can switch it to Manhattan, for instance, and you can see the difference between your area and the borough. We can go over to the economic tab, and you can see things like income. So we have median household income, which is a complex statistic that if you're aggregating data on your own or adding up these census tracts on your own, this is a harder calculation to do than just simply adding them. So it's nice to be able to come and just grab this simple number instead of having to go through the process of calculating it on your own. So we have a few medians and means that we've calculated in the application. And then if we go over to the next tab, you can see the variables included in the housing, which are things like housing occupancy, tenure, value, gross rent, and we can also switch to change over time, which we've used 2 ACS periods. So essentially the midpoint 2008 to the midpoint 2014. So you can look, and in this lower Manhattan area, there was a 25% increase in housing units. In most cases, you will not see significant change in these columns because it's a short time period. But when you see something like this, there's really something going on down here. And it's very interesting to see the characteristics behind this change. So with this 25% increase in housing units, we can switch back over the demographic tab and also see that there was a 24% increase in population between those two periods. So I'm going to return to the map and show you a few of the other major features that we've included. I'm going to clear the selection and switch to the neighborhood geography. And under advanced options, we have things that are showing the overlays like the subway system. So you can plan your search around the subway system if you knew the subway line that you were trying to look around or the subway stop. You can select the area around that. We have a community district overlay, we have community councils, and then the neighborhood tabulation areas if you want to help that guide your search, and Pumas and boroughs. Another thing we have are thematic maps, which we've chosen a few select variables that we think would help in your planning of finding a location or finding an area of a high concentration. So we have things like population density, under 18, 65 and over, foreign born, limited English proficiency. And you'll see next to each of these, there's a question mark, which is a tooltip that helps guide you through the application so that you can understand the definition of things or the calculations behind things. So if we click on limited English proficiency or the LEP population, you'll see where areas are in the dark red, means that there's a high concentration of that population. We can also turn on 65 and over to see that, and you can see that Upper West Side, Upper East Side, and a bunch of others are popping out. I'm going to click on the Upper West Side and go back to the profile. One of the charts that we really find helpful in our work is this age-sex pyramid. You can get a really good idea of what's happening in an area just by the population distribution. So you can see the blue, again, is the Upper West Side, and the white dot in this case is New York City, and New York City on average has more of a younger population than the Upper West Side does, so you can make judgments on each of these neighborhoods based on that. You can also change it and compare two areas if you were looking at two neighborhoods in your study or two community districts in your study, whatever the case may be, you can look at and compare those. Some other things I want to note is you can copy the data to a clipboard to add to an Excel table if you want to take it on the road and use it for other purposes. You can also download the data in a CSV, so everything that is included in your study area will be in the CSV. And you can also, this is the really great thing, is there's a shareable link. So every profile, every selected area, comparison area, and the profile view you're on gets a unique link created. So you can use it to save your work if you're selecting a whole bunch of areas that you want to do once and not have to select every single time you go into the app. You can save that, or you can share it with your colleagues if you want to make sure they're looking at the right geographies, or if you just want to cite it as part of your report and say, this is the area that I looked at. It's really a great feature that we've found to have. And then just a few other things. If you go into our About page, there's a tutorial that if you wanted to share with anyone else to watch, it's a short tutorial to show you how to work through the application. And then we love feedback. We've developed this on feedback, and we will continue to make updates based on feedback. So any feedback on the application is very powerful. A little bit about the application on this page as well. And then features, each of the features I went through, there's a little bit of a write-up on, so you can see just about what each of them are. And then the data, there's a little bit of a write-up on the decennial census and American Community Survey that Joel mentioned earlier. And that's about it. We would love to hear any feedback you have or questions, and we can walk through that.
Thank you. And the one thing I'll note is that our prior tools were very much fixed place-based. It was a community district boundary. The reason this one is so challenging is you can define your geography however you want it. And so I have to give a special shout out to a group within our IT division, the planning labs. They are the ones who work with our planners. Our planners have an idea of what they want, and the planning labs IT folks make it come to life. Any questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Eady.
This is quite impressive. Thank you. So when you did your radius search or polygon search, you did it, I believe, under neighborhood tabulation areas. If you were to use census tracts or census blocks, you did the same radius, I assume it would not take in the full tabulation area, it would take in the census tracts that are captured by the radius. Is that correct?
So whichever geography you're on, so for instance, if we're on census tract and we select a radius, I'll do it from this point again, but anything that's within your radius, that any tract that's
Just
touching it and
tracts.
intersecting, it'll select the census tracts. You can also switch between geographies, and it'll just select anything of that geography to the next level. Going backwards is harder because it still has all of the census tracts within the neighborhood tabulation area selected.
But if you had done originally census blocks, it would just pull up the census blocks
so we can
touched by the radius.
Yeah, so anything touching, so now I'm in census blocks, and anything touching the radius will be selected.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, certainly as you use it, we very much welcome feedback. This is the first iteration of it, and we'll just keep getting better as we get feedback from the public and from the commission.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a New York City Planning Commission public review session for Monday, July 23rd, 2018. The time is 1:22. The first item on the agenda is a pre-hearing review of a citywide text amendment. Jacqueline Sunwoo is here to present.
good afternoon. My name is Jackie Sunwoo. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember me from last time. I'm here to present a proposed zoning text amendment to require a special permit for new hotels in light manufacturing or M1 districts. On April 23rd, we referred out the proposal for a 60-day review period to all of the 59 community boards, the 5 borough presidents, as well as the 5 borough boards. I'll get to some of the recommendations that we've received later in this presentation, but I'll start with a bit of background. Since 2010, we've seen a lot of new hotels open in M1 districts, and they've generated some concerns amongst communities. Therefore, this proposal here is aiming, 1, to achieve balanced neighborhood growth, and 2, to ensure sufficient opportunities remain to support industrial, commercial, and institutional growth. So in the past few years, New York City's tourism industry has really boomed, and the robust visitors numbers led to strong demand for hotels, and consequently, there's been increased hotel development in the city, particularly the M1 districts. Today, these M1 areas vary widely in character, ranging from areas that still retain a lot of industrial activity to the areas that are very mixed with more commercial, retail, and office uses. But hotels in these areas could result in land use conflicts by creating unsafe conditions and nuisance, as well as unpleasant streetscapes. Therefore, we are proposing a zoning text amendment to establish a City Planning Commission special permit for new hotels, motels, and botels in M1 districts. We believe that a case-by-case, site-specific review process is necessary to ensure that hotels are built only on appropriate sites, minimizing conflicts in industrial areas, and achieving a balanced neighborhood growth in the more mixed-use M1 districts. So the special permit would apply to all commercial hotels in M1 districts. This is a citywide proposal as well. So in the map, you can see in orange are the areas that will be subject to a special permit, and in light blue are the areas where hotels could still develop as of right. In the areas affected by the proposal, new transient commercial hotels will be permitted only by a CPC special permit. However, for transient hotels that are for a public purpose, such as temporary housing for the homeless, they will continue to be permitted as of right as it is today. So in granting a special permit for new transient hotels, the Commission must find the following. 1, that the proposed site plan for the project shows that it'll minimize potential conflicts between the hotel and the adjacent uses. 2, that the hotel will not cause undue traffic and congestion in the area. And 3, that the proposed project will not impair the character of the surrounding area. Furthermore, hotels existing on the date of adoption will be considered conforming use, but an enlargement of a hotel use that wishes to increase by 20% or more of the floor area will have to get a special permit. Further, a hotel development that has a building permit from the Department of Buildings by the date of referral, which was April 23rd, will be vested. From the date of adoption of the text, however, they have 3 years to either complete construction or receive a certificate of occupancy. The text amendment was referred out on April 23rd, as I mentioned before. Out of the 59 community boards, we have received a total of 31 recommendations. 13 boards approved the proposal with no conditions, 14 approved with conditions, 2 disapproved, and the 2 others disapproved with conditions. The community boards that voted are listed on the right side of the table. Also, all 5 borough boards voted to approve the text amendment, but we only received 3 recommendation letters, and these are from Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. All 3 of them approved the proposal with conditions. Lastly, we received 2 borough president recommendations, which are from Queens and Brooklyn, and their feedback actually mirrored that of the borough board, so they approved the proposal with conditions as well. Some of the details of their feedback are laid out in the briefing sheet that was provided. So to summarize some of the concerns that we've received, I'll start with the more general ones and then zoom into the more local concerns. One of the concerns that came up repeatedly is that the requirement for a hotel special permit in one areas may actually increase hotel development in other as-of-right areas, such as commercial districts or MX districts. Several of the community boards actually asked that we do a study or request a special permit for hotels in these other as-of-right areas as well. Another recurrent concern was that the special permit findings are relatively vague and they need to be more specific. For instance, community boards have noted that the findings should include streetscape provisions, conditions for flood resiliency, additional parking, or provisions for concentration of hotels. Another aspect that community boards wanted more clarity on was a definition of a public purpose. So currently, the proposed zoning text reads, the special permit will not be required for a transient hotel operated for a public purpose. And while this was meant more for temporary homeless shelters in the context of this proposal, the community boards have actually noted that it needs to be more specific in the zoning text itself. Lastly, many community boards have expressed that the transient hotels for public purpose should also be subject to a special permit and the full ULURP process. We're having a hearing this following Wednesday, and by the time that we come back from the hearing, we're hoping to have more clarity on some of these issues, such as the definition of a public purpose or the specificities of the findings. So going down to more of the local concerns, these came from Manhattan Board 2, 5, and Queens Board 10. First, Manhattan Community Board 2 voted in favor with conditions, one of them being that the existing restrictions on ground floor use, such as in M15A and M15B districts, should be retained. So in other words, CB2 has requested that this hotel special permit not supersede existing provisions, such as the good faith marketing provision, which is 74-781, and or 74-711, which is a landmark preservation special permit. Manhattan Board 5, who voted against the proposal with conditions, noted that they either want to be excluded from the proposal or that the Department of City Planning determine a way to close the BSA hardship provision. CB5's main concern was that once this zoning text is adopted, an applicant filing for a hardship with the BSA may have a stronger chance to succeed because an as-of-right use, a zoning compliant use such as this hotel would no longer have to be made to make a case. And they see this as a potential increase in the approval of residential projects, which they do not want in their neighborhood. And lastly, Queens CB10 voted in favor with condition that airport properties and the M1 areas adjacent to the airports not be excluded from the text amendment. Their main concern was that there are many areas around the airport that are adjacent to residential uses with schools, and they believe that this restriction on hotels is necessary in their neighborhood. In response to the community board comments, the Department of City Planning filed a modification to the text, or an A-text, on June 29th. This text would modify the geographic applicability of the proposed action to include M1 districts immediately adjacent to John F. Kennedy Airport and LaGuardia Airport. In other words, any new hotel development in M1 districts outside of the airport properties will be subject to a special permit under this modification. This alternative was studied in the draft environmental impact statement and provides additional options for the commission and the city council as well. And this will be the only modification that we will be making at the time prior to the hearing. So to elaborate, these two maps show the areas that will be changed under the modification A text. The orange areas south of LaGuardia and the orange areas outside of JFK, they used to be exempt from the original proposal, but under the A text, they will be subject to a special permit now. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Cirillo.
I guess it would be helpful, thank you first. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It would be helpful, I know that, and we didn't go through every single community board recommendation, but in reading them through, I know that there were some, at least suggestions in Manhattan, a couple in Manhattan, and I know there was one in Staten Island that expressed concern about exempting specific projects that may be underway.
Right.
And I just wonder the approach, either for the public hearing on Wednesday, what we envision as even possible, or what the staff may be considering to recommend. And I do know that in reading the report, the memo, there is language in the memo that speaks of what type of project may actually not be subject to this text amendment or fall within sort of a framework of, we'll call it exemption, but probably not the correct word to use. And how that is being articulated to those who are concerned about whether or not their projects are subject to this and what they would need to do in advance. So it's sort of a broad-based question, but I just wondered how we were looking at that issue.
We've definitely been getting a lot of questions and concerns regarding projects that are to be vested, and as far as like the timeline of the text amendment as well. We are definitely hearing out the concerns of individual projects, but this is an overall citywide proposal based on land use rationales about commercial hotels. So if they have specific concerns, we've been encouraging them to come into the city planning and then discuss some of their timeline or how we can, if they either can go into the ground before the text is actually adopted.
Jackie, could you also reiterate what is in the proposal?
Yeah.
Right.
As far as grandfathering?
Oh, grandfathering. So if a project has a building permit or a partial permit by the date of referral, which was April 23rd, they are vested. Another option that a developer has is that they can follow the general grandfathering vesting provisions, which is they can get into the ground or build a foundation before the date of adoption of the text, which we've actually seen with some of the projects that are initiating right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I would add that the provision that we referred out is actually a bit more liberal than we would normally do, to do it out referral in a partial permit. So, because we did recognize at the time that we knew that there were a lot of projects at DOB, and we recognized that it would be potentially a hardship. So, we did acknowledge that early. That said, there are still even more projects that aren't even covered by this more liberal vesting provision. So I suspect we'll hear more at the public hearing on Wednesday, but we really do need to base it on an objective milestone in the permitting process. And although there are individual projects, we need to treat them all the same. So we really have to keep that in mind as we get feedback. And we'll have further conversations, see if there's more we can or should do with that provision to address some of the concerns that we've heard.
Sure, and it will be interesting to hear the public testimony, obviously, and that will help craft the next steps. I do know some of the projects are not necessarily new. They are expansions, which is not that this text is wouldn't be concerned about potentially expansions, but this is it's not directly related to what the text is attempting to control in terms of development and the public review process. So there are even distinctions within the types of projects that are pending and in progress for some, and where significant financial commitment has been made by applicants who are building or expanding around the city, hotels that are already in play. So anyway, we'll see. I appreciate the response and be interested, obviously, on Wednesday's public hearing.
And I will note that we anticipate that it is going to be quite a long public hearing on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you acknowledge concerns about the articulation of the findings and perhaps they're needing some more specificity. I know I share the view that streetscape ought to be particularly called out here. But I also have a question about the third finding, which is currently phrased to say that the proposed new hotel development will not impair the essential character or future use of the surrounding area. Is that, what role do market forces, economic considerations, financial considerations play here? And what do we understand about the competition within industrial areas, M zones, between hotel uses and the kinds of industrial uses that we want to encourage to remain? Are we, is there are they in competition with each other, and are hotels making life more difficult for as of right manufacturing uses? Is that one of the, how much do we know about that? And is that one of the motivations for this amendment?
Right. I mean, one of the driving factors of drafting that finding was definitely to preserve more areas for other uses, such as industrial use and other more manufacturing uses in the area. And we saw that hotels were in conflict with those uses. And with more hotels being built in these M1 areas, we wanted to make sure the competition wasn't as intense in those areas and preserve those neighborhoods. As far as the economic forces, we left the finding flexible enough so that we could the commission could actually determine the neighborhood area, but economic forces are typically not considered as zoning, as zoning is more based on land use. So that would be a separate consideration.
Okay. Well, so maybe just following up a little bit, this applies to M1 zones everywhere. So some of these may be within IBZs, industrial business zones.
That's correct.
Is there I know that the mayor's office has been looking at industrial business zones and industrial retention policies. Do hotels have a place in an IBZ?
So this stemmed out of the mayor's 10-point industrial action plan, which originally had a special permit for IBZs, and then we extended it to the M1 districts. So IBZs typically include M1, M2s, and M3s. And in M1, M2s, and M3s, hotels East Group 5 is actually not allowed. Right. So now if this proposal is adopted, then every hotel that wishes to go in an M1 within an IBZ would also have to go through a special permit process.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering, just as a policy matter, particularly considering that our colleague Commissioner Efron is not here today, should there even be hotels in IBZs? That's a rhetorical question, not one for you to answer, but I think it's hovering around.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the third item as well. It seems to me that it might be a question of hotel density, right, or quantity. I mean, the second hotel in an M1 may not change the character of the neighborhood, but the fifth or sixth one could very well be a tipping point, right?
Yeah. So we actually heard that concern a lot from the communities too, and some communities actually requested that we put in a provision for concentration of hotels. But given that this is a citywide proposal and M1 areas are very widely mapped, each neighborhood and M1s actually have a very different characteristic. And as you said before, like one big hotel in a neighborhood may actually bring significant changes to the neighborhood, whereas in other areas it may not. So I think that's why we believe that a case-by-case basis is actually important for hotel developments around the city.
And I note that would allow one to consider the fourth hotel and determine that that is different than the consideration of the first hotel. Yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, I also am stuck on that particular finding for many of the reasons that my fellow commissioners have mentioned. I know that we struggle at times with this question of character, and I think about Long Island City, for instance, where there are already many hotels. And one might argue that the essential character of that area now has changed, and it's now about hotels, even more so than the manufacturing there. And so I struggle with how we would be able to, come to some determination as to what is the essential character of an area that has already undergone significant change. And to this question of economics, future use of the surrounding area, and I understand it's a citywide amendment, but I'm just using this as an example. The tourism economy is so critical to Long Island City now, and you might begin to argue that that is the future use of that area, and therefore hotel development doesn't impair the essential character. I mean, I would agree that this is such an amorphous finding, you can really argue legitimately both ways, and I'm not sure what we get out of this. And so I'm curious how you've had to deal with this, thinking through, how it might be applied in a situation like Long Island City versus somewhere else.
Right. I mean, I think that's why it was important for us to leave it flexible enough so that we have enough discretion and as times change and as development patterns change too. And as far as comparing it with Long Island City too, the special permit doesn't prohibit the hotel development altogether. It still will allow hotel development in areas that are deemed appropriate. So I think the case-by-case and a location-based consideration of those hotels are actually important. So even in Long Island City, there's already a proliferation of hotels, but community boards and the commission will actually have a say in future new hotel developments that are to come. And we felt that the consideration was necessary before it could actually go in as of right.
This was a statement of confidence in the commission as the appropriate body, and also the recognition that, using the Long Island City example, there are areas within Long Island City that may have different characteristics. So even within M1 zones within Long Island City, I could imagine the commission reacting differently depending upon where in Long Island City, the size, various factors, and again, leaving it to the judgment of this deliberative body.
I mean, that's a risk, right? I mean, you end up with an incredible amount of discretion, and it makes it difficult for an owner to make a determination about the use of their property. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
I just want to make sure I have all of the materials. There was a package of community board and borough board recommendations on the dais today. And then the Friday package had a smaller package with a few others. But
yeah, the smaller package has the board. Sorry.
yeah, but are we missing the rest of them?
No, the smaller package has the borough president and the borough board recommendation letters, and the thicker package that was sitting on your desk today, those are all the community board letters that we received.
These are all the community board letters?
Yeah, we received 31 out of the 59.
So those are not available to us, or?
The 31 that's the thick package.
You have all of them. They tend not to be particular.
The 31 were sitting on the dais?
Yeah.
Okay. I know the Manhattan Borough President did send in a recommendation letter that's dated July 2nd, but you just indicated you hadn't gotten one from her.
Oh,
so
I haven't gotten one from
we've gotten them all.
Manhattan. Okay, I'll follow up with her and see.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we expect a lively public hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Items 2 and 3, page numbers 30 and 64, are pre-hearing reviews of a disposition of city-owned property and special permits in Long Island City, Queens Community District 2. Blake Monteith is here to present.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Lago and City Planning Commissioners. As you'll recall, this is a proposal to redevelop two sites in Long Island City at 2701 Jackson Avenue and 2632 Jackson Avenue through the disposition of city-owned property and 3 special permits. The sites are located in the Court Square neighborhood of Long Island City in Queens Community District 2, 2 blocks northeast of Citibank Tower on Jackson Avenue and close to 3 subway stations. The Court Square neighborhood has a wide variety of land uses, including residential, commercial, industrial, and community facility uses. The development sites, highlighted here in red, are located at the intersection of Jackson Avenue and 43rd Avenue. At 2701 Jackson Avenue, the Department of Housing, Preservation and Development and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services seek to shift 66,368 square feet of development rights from the city-owned properties on the right to the development site on the left. This would be facilitated by a zoning lot merger of the development site and the city-owned properties. The resulting development would be a 27, or I'm sorry, this is the development site on the left and the Queensboro Bridge approach ramps on the right. The resulting development would be a 27-story mixed commercial and residential building. It would be 323 feet high and would include a small retail space on Jackson Avenue, a 3-story public parking garage, and approximately 120 residential units, including 40 permanently affordable units. These permanently affordable units would comprise about 58% of the purchased development rights used, and those would be used for affordable housing. At 2632 Jackson Avenue, HPD and DCAS seek to shift 296,315 square feet of development rights from the city-owned lot on the right to the development site on the left. This would be facilitated by, again, by a zoning lot merger of the development site and the city-owned lot. So you can see the development site highlighted in red on the right and the approach ramps on the left. The resulting development would be a 49-story mixed commercial and residential building. It would be 514 feet high with 2 floors of retail on Jackson Avenue and approximately 361 total residential units. This would include 112 permanently affordable units, and these units would comprise about 37% of the purchased development rights. This image illustrates the proposed buildings in the context of existing and future development in the neighborhood. Now, as I've discussed, HPD and DCAS are requesting disposition actions for each site, but they are also the private owners of the development sites are also requesting modifications to bulk requirements on both development sites, as well as a public parking garage on the 2701 Jackson Avenue site. Now, in response to your questions at the last review session, our agency is examining where the proposed actions in this application could be applied elsewhere in the city. We have identified 17 city-owned sites under bridges with adjacent underbuilt private development sites in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. 8 of these sites are in Long Island City and are associated with the Queensboro Bridge, just as this application is. We believe that 4 of these sites, shown here in red, in Long Island City are most applicable to this proposal. The remaining 4 sites, shown here in blue, are less likely to be viable from our perspective because these have non-residential zoning, they have small development lots, or they would receive less than 100,000 square feet of development rights from the adjacent city-owned lots. However, it's important to note that any applications that seek to purchase development rights from city-owned sites would require extensive review by multiple city agencies and a full public review process with discretionary review by the Commission. And we will continue to examine and verify these sites and would be happy to provide more detailed information at the post-hearing review session if you require it. Queens Community Board 2 held a public hearing for this proposal on June 7th and voted 33-1 to recommend opposition to the proposed actions. The Community Board had the following concerns. First, the Court Square neighborhood is already overheated with development, and allowing for higher density development would further overburden the neighborhood. Second, public benefits provided are insufficient compared to expected private gains. They request lower income affordable housing and a one-to-one exchange of city-owned property for affordable housing. Third, the neighborhood lacks adequate infrastructure and community facilities. They request that the proposed development reserve space for public purposes, specifically requesting space for schools, community and open space, affordable artist studios, and medical facilities. And fourth, the city-owned lots under the elevated roadways are underutilized. They request that the city convert city-owned lots to public open space to support the neighborhood's growing population instead of using these lots for storage. They specifically request that the new open space include opportunities for the arts. Now, the Queensboro President's deadline to submit her recommendation is the end of the day today. We have not received her recommendation, but will certainly circulate this to you as we receive it. And this concludes my presentation.
Questions from the Commission? Yes, Commissioner Deleuze.
Hi. On Wednesday, during the hearing, it would be helpful to hear, I guess it's going to be from HPD, how the relationship between the total square footage that's being transferred and the total number of affordable housing units was determined.
Sure.
And, in keeping with Community Board 2's recommendation, whether they'd be open to requiring deeper affordability.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yeah, I'm continually fascinated by the nuance around MIH and where it applies and where it doesn't. And in this case, it wouldn't apply because in our text it says it
There's no
does not
residential
it does not create new residential floor area. But the additional air rights.
It's the difference between an upzoning to create new residential floor area versus a redistribution that can use existing floor area in different manners. I think we will probably hear questions about this at the public hearing, and then certainly at the post-hearing review session with the commission can go through this.
I do agree that,
Marin.
I'm sorry, I do agree that there seems to be an imbalance with the benefit gained and what we're giving back to the public in reference to the transfer of these air rights. So I do happen to agree that while there is a nuance regarding the MIH, there's something out of line here when it relates to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we'll certainly have HPD here to talk to the transaction. Yes, Commissioner Dweck.
To verify, the transfer is also, besides the affordable units, is coupled with a financial payment to the city.
That is correct, and HPD will provide more information on Wednesday.
Yes, Commissioner Levin.
That actually alludes to what was going to be my third question here, which is there additional consideration to the city besides affordable housing?
So again, there is a transaction. I do not have the details of that, but I will ask HPD.
It's affordable housing plus some other stuff.
Yes.
Okay, we'll look forward to hearing about the plus.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Dweck.
If they can provide us with how they came up to that financial consideration amount, we'd be interested in that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Did you have something else, Commissioner Levin?
Yes, I did. I wanted the two things before that. I wanted to say that I share the question about how the proportion of affordable units coming out of the relationship between the amount of TDRs and the amount of housing, I would like to understand much better because it does seem out of whack to the degree, as the community board has pointed out. And backing up to my very first comment, thank you for providing the list of soft sites and the information about them. I think that's very helpful to have.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Okay, this will be for a public hearing on Wednesday.
Item 4, page number 87, is a pre-hearing review of a site selection and acquisition for an NYPD parking facility in Queens Community District 7. Haikang Yang is here to present. There we go.
NYPD and DCAS are seeking the site selection and acquisition of privately owned parcels for the continued storage and parking use of departmental vehicles and privately owned employee vehicles. The project is located along 14th Avenue between 112th and 115th Street in College Point, Queens. It is located within an M11 zoning district, and the land uses within the area primarily consists of parking facilities, industrial and manufacturing, transportation, and utility uses. The parking lot is approximately 50,000 square feet of paved, unimproved surface parking lot and holds approximately 165 vehicles. Only NYPD personnel can access the site through a security gate via a private street off of 14th Avenue that is part of the Edgewater Business Park. The parking lot facilitates the storage and parking needs of the NYPD Queens Narcotics and Organized Crime Division office building located at 111th Street, a block away from the project site. The 2010 license agreement between property owner and NYPD expired, and the proposed site selection and acquisition of the project site would allow the continued use of the parking lot. On April 9th, the CPC certified this application. On June 11th, 30 board members of Community Board 7 voted to approve the application, and 9 members voted against. The application was approved with a condition that there be no additional units assigned or major personnel increases at the NYPD facility located at 111th Street. On June 21st, the Borough President recommended approval with condition that reflected the Community Board's concerns. I'd like to address Commissioner Knuckles. At my CPC hearing, I said that it was a purchase rather than a lease. It's actually a 10-year lease. And if you had further questions, DCAS is here to speak on it on Wednesday.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, we'll see this on Wednesday at the public hearing.
Thank you.
Item number 5, page 111, is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Queens Community District 10. Blake Monteith is here to present.
Hello again. This is a private application for a zoning map change for 2 tax lots in Ozone Park to extend the existing C23 commercial overlay 40 feet. There are multiple transit resources, including the A train and 3 bus lines in the direct surrounding area. The project area was part of the 2013 Ozone Park rezoning and is predominantly commercial along Liberty Avenue, and detached and semi-detached 1- and 2-family residential is to the north and south of the project area. The applicant's property has a 2-family dwelling at the adjacent lot and is the applicant's property is a 2-family dwelling unit, and the adjacent lot is currently a real estate and tax office. These are photos of the site, with the applicant's property being the greenhouse on the right. The proposed zoning map amendment would extend the adjacent C23 commercial overlay 40 feet south of Liberty Avenue. The applicant's land use rationale is that the area was mapped irregularly during the Ozone Park rezoning. Lefferts Boulevard is a wide street and will bring the zoning boundary in line with the east side of the street. The proposed development is a 1-story plus cellar commercial building with no parking proposed. This item was certified on May 7th. The Community Board recommended approval with 31 members voting in favor and none against or abstaining. There were no members of the community who spoke for or against this action. The Community Board believes the rezoning was overlooked in the 2013 Ozone Park rezoning, but recommended a condition to maintain the shared driveway between lots 11 and 12. The Borough President recommended approval with the condition that any future development on the lot, on lot 11, does not encroach on the shared driveway as well. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Levin.
So how does the shared driveway work? Does the lot line go down the middle of the driveway so that it's partly on lot 11 and partly on lot 12?
That is correct. And we have confirmed that there is an easement on file for this driveway.
Okay, so it is publicly recorded, can't be taken away.
Exactly, as far as we know.
Without the 2 property owners' agreements.
Right.
Okay.
It's in the deed.
Okay, good, thank you.
Other questions? Another matter for Wednesday's public hearing.
Item number 6, page 128, is a pre-hearing review of special permits in Manhattan Community District 5. Calvin Brown is our presenter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a private application returning for pre-hearing by East 16th Street LLC and Trinity Christian Center of Santa Ana for special permits to modify height, setback, minimum side yard regulations, and minimum distance between buildings. There's also a program to establish continuum maintenance for a landmark building that's also associated with this application. In addition to the bulk waivers that are being requested, the applicant is also asking for a special permit to allow 15 additional residential accessory parking spaces. The project area is located just outside of the Special Union Square district and is located within a C62A contextual zoning district that has maximum base height and a maximum height. The surrounding context is a mix of commercial buildings, you have residential buildings, and you have mixed-use buildings where there's commercial, residential, and community facility uses. The project area is just north of 14th Street, which is a major commercial corridor, and is east of Union Square Park. The development site, which is located on East 16th Street, is currently used as a public parking garage. And the two associated sites, which are along 15th Street, one of them being the former Century Association building, which is designated as a landmark, and a 4-story commercial building that is adjacent to that lot. Just to provide a little context for East 115th Street, which is a little unique.
Well, note that Calvin spends a lot of his time uptown. This is East 15th.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. And I was reminded of that during the briefing. It just slipped in there, but hey.
It's an uptown frame of mind.
Exactly. Thank you for catching that. On 15th Street, on the northern side of the block, you have a series of 4-story buildings that sort of characterize that portion of the block. But to the south of the block, you have the Zeckendorf building, which is a 20-plus story building. The applicant is proposing a 20-story building that will have approximately 80,000 square feet and a range between 40 to 55 residential units. The applicant is proposing a base height of 230 feet or 19 stories, and then after a series of setback, a maximum base height of 283 if you factor in the bulkheads. The applicant is also proposing to have 23 accessory residential parking spaces, which will provide entry on the eastern portion of the lot, both exit and entry and exit. It will be an automated parking garage where residents will park their cars in, punch in a code, and it will take it to its designated parking space. And similarly, when they're retrieving their cars, they'll put in a code and retrieve their vehicles. As part of this application, there is a program to establish continuum maintenance of the landmark that is located on East 15th Street, the former Century Association building, and LPC will record, there will be a restrictive declaration recorded against the site to make sure that the owners perform the continuum maintenance that's associated with the facade and some of the other requirements that are listed here under proposed improvements. In order to facilitate the development, the applicant is asking for a number of bulk waivers to modify height, setback, side yard regulations, and minimum distance between buildings. So the first of them being the base height. In this district, this is a contextual district, and it has a maximum base height of 85 feet. After that, a building has to set back. The applicant is asking to rise up to 230 feet before setting back. So the area in blue is the waivers that is being requested. They're also asking for less than the required 15 feet setback. So you have to, after the base height, you have to set back 15 feet, but they're asking for less than that. And there's you can see the setbacks at the most northern portion of the building that they're proposing. This is a contextual district, so the maximum height is 120. The applicant is asking to rise to a height of 283 if you factor in the bulkheads. Without the bulkheads, is at a height of 268 feet. They're also asking for waivers to side yards, No side yard is required. However, if any open space area extended along a lot line is provided at any level, you have to provide a minimum of 8 feet, and they're asking to waive that provision. There's also in one portion of the building where there's windows to walls, and you're required to have a setback of 50 feet, minimum distance, sorry, between wall and window of 50 feet. The applicant is requesting a minimum distance of 30 feet, so a waiver of 20 feet. So this is just a rendering of the proposed building up against the Zeckendorf building, just to show sort of area context in terms of height. In terms of the parking, the applicant is asking for a waiver. So within this district, within the Manhattan core, you're allowed as of right 20% of the available and planned residential units. So the applicant is asking for a waiver pursuant to 13451, additional parking for residential growth. And based on the findings related to the change in residential dwelling units, as well as the change in residential parking spaces, the commission may allow additional parking. The applicant is asking for 23 accessory residential spaces in total, and this is as part of the number of dwelling units that they are proposing. They're only required to have 8 to 11, so they're asking for anywhere between 12 and 15 additional parking spaces. So Community Board 5 on May 21st voted, and it was referred out, to the Community Board on May 21st. The full board voted on June 14th and voted to disapprove this project. Some of their concerns felt like the project would alter the neighborhood character, and they felt like this application should trigger MIH. On July 19th, the borough president issued a recommendation with similar sentiments that this project should trigger MIH. And that's it.
Questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Delahoo's.
I know one thing that would be helpful during the hearing is to get a sense of if this building were built to the underlying zoning without the waivers, how that would alter the proposal. It would be helpful. I don't know if they happen to have drawings. I mean, certainly what we have here gives some sense of that, but that would be helpful. And I'm assuming, so the main rationale, I guess, from the developer's perspective for the significant number of waivers for the public benefit is the maintenance and restoration of a landmark facility.
I cannot answer that, but they should be able to answer that on Wednesday.
Okay, thanks.
I would also note that if we look at the 15th Street frontage, I don't believe there's a proposal for an as-of-right alternative, but there are development rights also associated with the non-landmarked 4-story building adjacent to the landmark, which could be built on that side. I would have to think that the Landmarks Preservation Commission, when they looked at it, saw the opportunity to preserve the landmark, keep an in-context 4-story building next to it with the development rights going to one site that was more in keeping with the Zeckendorf Towers.
Because it all becomes one zoning lot when they merge, yes.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, clarification for myself on the provisions in under 13451, and the applicant's response to the findings. Under A, the number of off-street parking spaces in such proposed parking facility is reasonable and not excessive, and they talk about that. Then under B, which is the proposed ratio of parking spaces to dwelling units in the proposed development does not exceed 20% of total number of dwelling units. Their response leans again on reasonable and not excessive. They don't mention that that in fact they're not addressing that finding at all. I guess I wonder if I'm missing something or misunderstanding how these findings work.
So I will admit that being uptown, Manhattan core is very new, and is based on.
If this were 115th Street, you'd have the answer.
I would know, but it's based on this sort of this ratio and this methodology that they explain in their letter, and in terms of if you're not, they have to show that they're not creating that with the amount of parking that's planned, and they look at a period between 2007 and 2021, that they're not, that the area is still not meeting the parking demand.
We can make sure that the applicant is prepared to discuss this on Wednesday.
Yeah, because the way I read it, it's that the proposed ratio of parking spaces to dwelling units in the proposed development, which is different than saying in the area. And, they seem okay with respect to the 20% methodology in the area, but not with respect to the proposed development. So I'm.
Oh, maybe they did. So, because as part of the methodology, you're supposed to look at without the proposed development and with it. So maybe that was an omission on their part, and they can respond to that on Wednesday.
Okay, I was just, we can do it, and someone can explain to me later. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Borough presidents.
It was sent in your packages over the weekend because we got it late on the 19th.
Questions? Okay, it's for the public hearing on Wednesday.
Item number 7, page 195, is a pre-hearing review of a special permit in Manhattan Community District 4. Annie White is here to present.
Good afternoon. Again, this is an application back for pre-hearing review for a special permit pursuant to 74711 for a property located at 116 West 23rd Street in Community District 4, Borough of Manhattan. The applicant for this project is the Burlington Coat Factory of New York, LLC. The property is located in the Ladies Mile Historic District, and it's a special permit to modify signage regulations to legalize non-conforming accessory commercial signs, including 1 blade sign and 13 flag signs. So the building indicated here in the red line is located at the intersection of the Flatiron and Chelsea neighborhoods, fronting on 6th Avenue between West 22nd and West 23rd Street. The Ladies Mile Historic District is indicated by the purple dashed line. So the site straddles 3 zoning districts, M16, C63X, and C64X, but all the signs of the subject application are located in the commercial portions of the lot. The existing 5-story landmark commercial building has approximately 170,000 square feet of use group 6 and 10 commercial floor area, and there are multiple establishments occupying the ground floor of the building, including the Anchor Burlington store and a DXL Men's Apparel, an Essen Deli, and a Blue Mercury. So here's a plan showing the overall signage of the building, which will be for the legalization of 14 signs. There's 1 blade sign at West 22nd and 6th Avenue, which is indicated by the blue rectangle. The existing flag signs are indicated by the solid red circle, and there are 4 proposed flag signs in the dotted circles. Here's a view of the facade showing the blade sign indicated by the blue rectangle. The blade sign was installed in 1995, and it's an illuminated dual-faceted accessory sign that reads Burlington Coat Factory. It has dimensions of approximately 31 feet by 3.5 feet, and it is attached to the facade starting at 30 feet above grade. And here's a zoom in to give you a better look at those flag signs. Here are the existing flag signs adjacent to the Burlington store. They are double-sided banners located on flagpoles and historic flagpole anchors attached to the facade of the building at approximately 13 feet above grade. The banner portions of the sign has dimensions of around 6 feet by 3 feet. So as I said, 9 of the 13 flag signs were installed in 2014, and then 4 additional flag signs are proposed. So the waivers are sought through the special permit for the following two sections of the zoning resolution. The section that defines permitted projections of commercial signs. So the maximum permitted projection is 18 inches, but the blade sign projects approximately 6 feet and the flag signs around 4.5 feet. And secondly, the section that provides for the height of signs in commercial districts. Permitted signs shall not extend more than 40 feet above curb level, but the blade sign begins approximately 30 feet above curb level and continues to a height of 61 feet. So during its public review at its full board meeting on June 6, Manhattan Community Board 4 voted unanimously in favor of a resolution recommending approval of the application. And additionally, on July 13th, the Manhattan Borough President issued a recommendation to approve the application. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? I will note, having gone by the building today, the wisdom of having a special permit that allows us to recognize that not all buildings, not all signs, not all neighborhoods are created equal is borne out, I think, by the strong community board and borough president support for this application. And so this will go to public.
Thank you.
Item number 8, page 235, is a pre-hearing review of a business improvement district expansion in Manhattan Community District 2. Kendall Moses is here to present.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, commissioners. Again, I'm Kendall Moses, and I'm in the Housing, Economic and Infrastructure Planning Division. I'm presenting this application for the amendment of the Hudson Square Business Improvement District. The amendment for the Hudson Square application was brought up to us by the Small Business Services on behalf of the Hudson Square Connection to expand the Hudson Square bid, amending the district plan. The amended district plan expands the bid first approved in 2008 and later amended in 2013. The existing bid boundaries are run from Canal Street in the south to West Houston Street in the north, and 6th Avenue in the east to Granite Street in the west. The expansion takes the bid out to West Street and up to Clarkson Street in the north. The district is in Community District 2 and City Council District 3 with Councilmember Corey Johnson, Speaker. The existing bid has over 1,000 businesses with over 100 ground floor retailers. There are about 3,000 residents within approximately 1,500 units. The expansion adds 392 tax lots with 64 commercial and mixed-use properties and 86 commercial tenants. Hudson Square is historically a loft-like industrial neighborhood that formerly housed the printing industry. Now the area is home to more creative industry. Until recent rezonings, residential use in the area was very limited. Following the 2013 rezoning, residential development greatly increased. According to the sponsors, over 120 residential units have been completed or are underway. And since 2008, 6 new hotels with over 1,200 rooms have come online. The plan for expansion was spurred by residential and commercial growth in the neighborhood, the unique traffic challenges of the Holland Tunnel, and community interest in connecting with the waterfront. The bid intends to implement traffic management and pedestrian safety programs. It will undertake a maintenance program of capital improvements that will improve public spaces and continue a comprehensive plan of substantial streetscape improvements to promote a lively, active, and creative street life and neighborhood. The estimated annual budget for the first year is $3.2 million, which is $2.5 million for the existing bid and $700,000 for the expansion. The full range of services are, you can see here, with the majority of the funding going to streetscape planning and design with about 29-30%, management and pedestrian safety, at 22% and retail and marketing at about 18%. The main source of funding for the bid is an assessment with commercial properties assessed at a 28% per commercial square foot. The maximum assessment is $275,548. The minimum is about $64, with the average of $5,844. As the area continues to develop, the assessment may decrease. The assessment rate may decrease. The properties are classified according to their land use, with B and D classes B and D are assessed at about $1. Class C is exempt, and Class F is not applicable to the properties in the expansion area, just to the Hudson Square zoning district. Support for the expansion was garnered through door-to-door visits, mailings, and public meetings, as well as letters of support from the property owners and commercial tenants. Of the property owners that responded to the solicitation, about 90% of assessed value and 93% of commercial square footage are in support of the bid. District Community Board 2 held a hearing and voted on a resolution of no opposition on June 21st in 2018. Here you can see the work that the bid has done on Hudson Street before and after. The commission is they're requesting that the commission approve the amended district plan for the expansion, and there are documentation binders for your review in the conference room.
Questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, thank you. I certainly think that the Hudson Square bid has done a really good job in improving the neighborhood. I have a question more about how we, as a commission, are able to review this material in context, and some of the information around budget, for instance. It would be helpful to know what the average big bid budgets look like and how it compares, just to determine that they're in line and that we feel comfortable with with that. And I know that SBS collects that information.
SBS will be able to
hear on this. This is more a question for them. I'm just curious, are we just comfortable with where they ended up with respect to their budget, and is it in line with industry standard? Okay, thank you.
The one thing that I will note, and the back-to-back bids that we have today showed the widely varying nature of the bids. Not surprisingly, in this bid, traffic issues loom large because of the Holland Tunnel, and a very different tenant mix, multi-story buildings with large tenants, many in the advertising, new media, versus the next one where we'll see one-story, sometimes two-story retail. But SBS will be able to both give us that sense, but also why there could be very legitimate variations. Yes, Commissioner Levin.
I have another question probably for SBS, and that is about the approvals that they received. Strong approvals from commercial assessed value and commercial square footage, but only 20% of commercial properties and 20% of the commercial tenants were in support. And it would be nice if SBS could put those numbers in context and assure us that this has the support it needs.
Other questions? Okay, we'll see this at the public hearing on Wednesday. And Kendall will remain for our next presentation.
Yes. Item 9, page 245, is a pre-hearing for a business improvement district in the Bronx Community District 10. And as said, Kendall will be presenting this as well.
Okay. 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 Thanks again. I'm presenting the application for a proposed Throgs Neck Business Improvement District. The proposed Throgs Neck bid is located in the southeastern part of the Bronx in the Throgs Neck neighborhood. It's represented by City Council member Mark Jonah. Throgs Neck is in Community Board 10. The application also submitted by SBF on behalf of the Throgs Neck Bid Steering Committee. The proposed district is comprised of 180 properties, generally located along both sides of East Tremont Avenue from Brooklyn Boulevard to Miles Avenue. Near the proposed district, located to the north and west, is the St. Raymond's New Cemetery. To the south and east is the southeast is the SUNY Maritime College. Throgs Neck is a low-density neighborhood with a diverse housing stock, including middle-class homes and the Throgs Neck Housing Project. The proposed bid is located in the R3A, R41 zoning district with C1 and C2 commercial overlays. Encompassing what you see here are a variety of restaurants, healthcare facilities, professional offices, and approximately 14 national chains. The proposed bid is being established to improve the quality of life and serve all constituents in the district. There are the top 5 business types along the commercial corridor. These are the top 5 commercial in the commercial corridor. The most frequent establishments is the food and entertainment industry. The bid intends to host community events and improve the streetscape within the district in order to raise living standards and attract residents to the area. The bid may provide sidewalk amenities, as you can see at the top, also try to identify and beautify the district. The bid may also work to improve pedestrian circulation and safety within the district. The proposed bid here, first year budget is anticipated to be $340,000, which is, I do believe, typical for this size of a bid. And maintenance, with the top going to maintenance and sanitation at 33%, marketing and special events at 30%, and the remainder going to advocacy and administration. Revenue also generated for the bids through an assessment of all benefited lots based on their registered land uses. The Class A rate is based on linear lot footage, plus a flat fee for corner lots and upper floor commercial uses. Residential properties are assessed a flat fee of $1. Vacant parcels pay a flat rate as well. $300 per corner lot frontage, and $300 for additional floor of commercial use. And nonprofit and government are exempt. The maximum is $11,900, a little above, $37,10 for the minimum, and the average is about $2,411. Okay. Support for the bid was garnered through door-to-door visits, public meetings, mailings, letters of support, and media outreach. The assessed value is in support of the bid at about 58% of those responding affirmatively, and 42% of responding commercial tenants are in support. The Community Board 10 also held a hearing where 19, on June 27th, where 19 are in favor of the proposed bid out of 22. So this demonstrates the scale of the neighborhood. The commission, they're requesting that the commission approve the proposed district plan for the bid establishment, and the documentation binders are also in the conference room for your review.
Questions? Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, thank you again. I have a few questions, I think they're for SBS. One, I noted that the budget that we were shown there differs from the budget in the district plan. Maybe it's that there's more detail on that one and less detail on this one? Because that was, my original question was going to be, you know, I don't see how they're budgeting for public safety, you know, and beautification.
It's in the, also in the documentation, there's a more detailed budget.
Okay, okay, so if that discrepancy, if they could describe that discrepancy. And then, you know, I noticed that they mentioned, and I'm curious whether this is standard or this was just a result of the negotiation for this particular bid, that they're restricting any assessment from going towards facade or storefront improvement programs, and that they shall not be funded by assessment dollars. I don't generally see that. I feel like that hamstrings the organization when small businesses like this really could benefit from storefront improvements. So if they could describe sort of the rationale behind incorporating that restriction into the district plan in perpetuity, that would be great. And then I'm going to get really slammed for this one, but I'm curious whether, you know, SBS collects or has considered collecting a fee or percentage for the service they provide with respect to the assessment. You know, and wondering how the city, as someone who would feel like we're representing city's interest, you know, these new bids require services. We want SBS to be well-funded to provide those services. I know that's always a struggle with city tax levy dollars, and the degree to which, you know, we should be thinking about incorporating something, some admin fee. I know that does happen with great frequency in other places, but not here in New York. So just interested in SBS's response to that. Okay, thank you.
I don't know if the word is depending upon the audience.
Exactly.
Commissioner Edie.
Okay. Whatever information, this might be SBS again, they talk about the support from the commercial properties of 58% of the assessed value, which means 42% we don't know what their response is. And you know, in theory, I guess they could have opposed it. Most likely, there was no comment. But I just would like them to be able to comment on that as well.
Other questions? Okay, this will be our final public hearing on Wednesday, although the order may be different, but it's the last of the ones we're considering today.
Okay, on Wednesday, staff have prepared reports on the following projects. 205 Park Avenue rezoning, the LSSNY Early Life Center Marcus Garvey, 5563 Summit Street rezoning, the NYPD Evidence Storage Erie Basin, the NYPD Bomb Squad Facility, the Central Harlem West 132nd Street Historic District, Engine Companies 264 and 328, and Ladder Company 134 landmark designations, the 53rd Precinct Station House landmark designation, and the 5 Beamont Avenue rezoning. Also scheduled for a decision on Wednesday, July 25th, are 19 Highmount Road, a certification for future subdivision, 661 Tote Hill Road, authorizations for topographical and tree and planting modifications on Staten Island. Both those two were on Staten Island. And the College of Mount St. Vincent Residence Hall and Nursing School authorizations for development in a steep slope and tree and topo modifications in the Bronx. Okay.
I'll just note that we've been busy. This is a lot of votes for one meeting.
A lot of votes. Staff are preparing reports also for 80 Flatbush. There is a letter in your package from the applicant, and I believe the Brooklyn office is here to discuss.
Yes. With Commissioner Dello who's recused.
So we have 9 public hearings plus all those votes.
The presentation they're going to. Thank you. You can take one.
Afternoon, Commissioners. In your packets, you have a letter from the applicant team responding to the Borough President's recommendation. Regarding the modification of the zoning district to a C64 with additional density bonuses, the applicants have stated that they believe the 18 FAR district is appropriate here within downtown Brooklyn, adjacent to transit and along Flatbush Avenue. Regarding the design and build of a new subway entrance for the 2-3 line heading south, the applicants have stated that this is not an effective use of resources. The site is several feet away from that platform, and there is another 2-3 platform at Nevin Street, a couple blocks north. Regarding the DOE and SCA, that the DOE and SCA should commit funding for the construction of a new elementary school, the applicants have stated that all the funding for District 15 Subdistrict 3 has already been earmarked for other projects, and that there aren't any funds for the 80 Flatbush Avenue Elementary School. Regarding shifts in massing and heights for the proposed project, the applicants have stated that their master plan scheme really celebrates the school, which affords for large floor plates and unobstructed outdoor space, and that there is a need for wanting to preserve these buildings, listening to feedback from the community, and therefore the 5-building scheme is what they believe is the best in terms of a pedestrian experience. Regarding moving the elementary school entrance to 3rd Avenue, the applicants have stated that they believe that the elementary school along State Street is a compatible use, and that there are many elementary schools within brownstone low-rise neighborhoods, and that this is not a new concept. Regarding moving the Phase 1 loading dock from State Street to Skimmerhorn Street, the applicants have stated that this would cause a series of issues related to planning, safety, and operations. First, it would prevent the potential public space at Temple Plaza. Second, it would put a loading dock next to a high pedestrian trafficked area where there's going to be proposed commercial uses. And then lastly, just from an operational standpoint, they believe that it is too narrow for Skimmerhorn Street at that location is too narrow, and you wouldn't get enough truck rotations happening. And they have also provided a letter from DOT that also explains the operational issues here, and DOT would not recommend a loading dock on Skimmerhorn Street. Regarding implementing curb extensions, the applicants have agreed and they'll work with DOT to do so. Regarding the Borough President's recommendation for more family-sized units and units targeting seniors, the applicants have agreed to work with HPD, CB2, and to create a community advisory group to allocate units for those constituents. Regarding a set-aside for formerly homeless families and former CB2 residents, the applicants have stated they would work with the Borough President's office and HPD to locate former CB2 residents and find units for them within the new affordable units, and they will work to set aside units for formerly homeless residents. Regarding the incorporation of sustainable building and resiliency measures within the projects, the applicants have stated they are going for a LEED Gold certification for the 2 mixed-use towers and are working with SCA to build passive house schools within the project. Lastly, they wanted to note that the application itself is a transit-oriented project and will not be providing parking, and therefore is also, in general, a more sustainable concept. Regarding implementing a rat baiting plan prior to and during construction, The applicants will do so and will do so through a community benefits agreement, talking to various stakeholders to find a plan during construction. And finally, regarding hiring MWLBE contractors and subcontractors, the applicants have stated a goal of having 30% contracts for minority, women, and local business enterprises, and have committed to working with 32BJ, and lastly, have hired an equity officer to help implement these plans. In addition to the Borough President's recommendation, the department also wanted to put forward a presentation for discussion due to the number of public testimony and discussion about this project through the ULURP regarding both its density and form. So the 80 Flatbush proposal is unique in its ability to achieve many public policy goals. This includes providing housing and affordable housing, creating 2 new public facilities, providing much needed office space in this area, and overall really thinking through a design of a building and how it hits the ground and meets various contexts. In many ways, this is achievable because the site itself is over 60,000 square feet. And this is one of the few remaining sites along the Flatbush Avenue corridor that is of this size. The project, again, is also in downtown Brooklyn. So as a refresher, downtown Brooklyn is the largest central business district outside of Manhattan. It has over 12 million square foot of office. In recent years, it's become a lot more dynamic with a growing residential population. There's over 65,000 students in this area, which is
And the one thing I'll note is that that is more than the student population of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
There's also a number of other amenities and attractions in this area that are all confined to a location that is extremely transit-rich. In zoning, the downtown Brooklyn area is defined by the Special Downtown Brooklyn District, seen here in blue. What's also unique about this area is that it is surrounded by strong brownstone Brooklyn neighborhoods, many of which have mapped historic districts or are zoned contextually. This in many ways has helmed in development and confined it to the special district. The site itself is also in a unique location within the special district. It has 3 major streets along it: Flatbush Avenue, Skimmerhorn Street, and 3rd Avenue, and is also directly across the street from Atlantic Terminal, which has more subway lines than Times Square. There's also numerous bus lines in this area. The project itself is a high-density project with a number of different uses, including 2 schools, over 200,000 square feet of office, over 900 units, and 40,000 square feet of retail. What's interesting is that this unique mix is exactly what sort of promotes walkability in these high-density districts and is in line with the 24/7 culture of downtown Brooklyn. There's been a lot of discussion about the density and the project being precedent setting, but in CD2, there's actually already a historical precedent for densities that actually achieve FARs higher than the proposal. So on this side, there's a series of buildings along Court Street that are all high density and used to formerly be the main commercial district here. There's also another example nearby the site, which we've all seen, the Williamsburg Savings Bank. This in itself is also a high-density building, and when it was built under the intention of being adjacent to transit and potentially setting a trend for this area in terms of higher density buildings. There's also been discussion about these sorts of buildings and their adjacency to lower context. There's already a number of examples in CD2 where you do get this adjacency with tall, dense buildings abutting against lower rise context. But nevertheless, when you have applications with high density, it's actually part of the department's role to work with teams to really design and shape these buildings. And so one way the AED Flatbush application did so is really think through how they organize the program on the site. So this diagram kind of shows you how they allocated certain active uses and commercial uses along the corridors that are wider and have that activity adjacent to it. So Flatbush Avenue with retail and office, and then the cultural uses across the street from the cultural district and Skimmerhorn Street, and then allocating more compatible uses against a residential context. So residential use along State and 3rd Avenue, and then the lower school on State Street. Building design was also an important component for this. So the applicant team had over 120 meetings with different stakeholders, and it's through those discussions that they shaped and designed the building. One example that you see here is the corner building on phase 1. There is strong input from the community on wanting to maintain State Street as more private and creating a barrier between State Street and Flatbush Avenue. So in the phase 1 tower, the materiality and transparency has been controlled both from State Street and Flatbush Avenue, where you have less uses occurring on State Street and a more opaque facade, versus Flatbush Avenue, where they wanted to maintain more activity and transparency, and where you'd have the office entrance and the retail. This attention to detail also found itself along the building form for State Street. So from an urban design perspective, how we experience buildings is usually the lower few floors, and the applicants really worked on the facade design of State Street to maintain a 50-foot cap on the base height throughout the full frontage, and also broke up the massing to create variation throughout, so you don't get a single design or aesthetic as you walk along State Street. And as this axon shows, you have the results of how form and use have sort of come together to create a transitional massing. Going from left to right, you have multiple strategies in place on State Street. You have preservation happening at the 3rd and State Street intersection. Then you come along a entry court for the elementary school, where you get a fully expressed elementary school, and you can see here the unobstructed outdoor space. And then as you move along the corner, you begin to get sort of the setback strategy on the first phase as it rounds a corner on Flatbush Avenue. In closing, it's this proposal with its unique mix within the central business district, with its amenities and its transit access, and this carefully designed site plan and design that actually makes this project and shows the benefits of concentrating density at these high transit access areas.
Any questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
I want to know what's in the appendix. I gotta ask the right question to find out what's the question. Thank you for that. That's a powerful presentation, and I really appreciate the historical context. And you're showing us some of the older buildings that are, like this one, 120 Broadway. Way more dense than we ever imagined and go beyond what is being requested here. I have two questions. One to follow up on one of the concerns expressed in the borough president's letter, and that's about the possibility that the space that is here designated for commercial office space could turn into something else like a hotel. Are there protections in the arrangements between the city and the developer that are going to require that to be office space, or are we in a fluid, whatever the market can support situation?
I believe that between the development agreement between ECF and Alloy Development, the program is set as stated.
Okay, so it can't change without the city's okay. Yeah, okay. And there was a line in the, maybe, I've been on vacation a little bit, so maybe I missed this, but there was a line in the borough president's letter about how the 12 FAR cap on housing being lifted. I know that's a hot topic in Albany, but I thought we were still.
The session passed without any action on that.
Okay, yeah, so there's the 12 FAR cap on residential lives on.
Remains.
Okay.
The other thing that I'll note about the 12 FAR cap, there has been some misinformation that were the state legislation to change, that suddenly one could exceed it. It would require a full ULURP, not to mention the months, if not years, of planning ahead of time.
Going to guess that that was the case as well. But anyway, thank you for that correction. Yeah, my last question, I think I probably know the answer. It is concerning to me, and I know to some of my colleagues, that the affordable housing is being pushed off to phase 2. Has there been any further thought on that? Is there any possibility of getting some affordable housing in phase 1? Are we dealing with the application as it was presented to us?
From my understanding, I don't think there has been further discussion about incorporating affordability in phase 1. Again, this application is balancing many social benefits, and phase 1, the public benefit are the 2 schools. So there are a lot of needs in this area, both schools, housing, affordable housing, and as a ECF project, the phase 1 is prioritizing the school construction.
Yeah, no, I fully understand that. It is troubling to me, the degree to which ECF uses these kinds of applications essentially as a financing tool when we have other, land use and affordable housing issues to grapple with. I understand that it's all a balance. I might balance it a different way, but okay, but this is what it is, right? No changes yet.
That's the application that we would be voting on.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
Okay, for post-hearing follow-up, I would inquire if there are any further questions on 57 Caton Place rezoning, 1881, 1883 McDonald Avenue rezoning, the O'Neill's rezoning. Yes.
Can I ask about O'Neill's? Our briefing materials included quite a bit of community response that I gather came in through the website or, independent of the hearing, that expressed some neighborhood quality of life concerns that I had expected that we would hear more of at the public hearing, but we really didn't. I guess I'd be interested in staff's assistance in putting the totality of public comment in context, because I do think, if you go out to that neighborhood, it does seem like a very crowded, hard parking, impossible parking environment, and a place where an expanded catering hall is not the first thing you would think of allowing at that location. So I'd appreciate assistance in the future, understanding how to put all of the community contact,
Certainly.
Community comment together.
Right. What we can do is have the borough office address some of that, and then also we'll share the comments that we received with the applicant and ask them to respond, sort of give a holistic response on their end as well.
Thank
you. Just to note, staff are working on a comprehensive responses on 27 East 4th Street. If there are any further questions on that. Yes.
I have a couple of questions that I hope would be included in that comprehensive response, not answers today, but eventually. One is to understand the situation with the lot line windows at 25 East 4th Street. It was asserted that some of them may be legal, and legal or not, what are they being used for? It was also asserted to us that the Landmarks Preservation Commission, in issuing its design approval on a project like this, does not consider impacts on a neighboring landmark. Yeah, is that correct, or,
And then finally, I really wonder where the Department of Parks is on this as the homeowner. They own the Merchant House Museum and are the stewards of a historic asset. And the world at large isn't going to care who approves this thing or not, whether it's LPC or us or the Department of Buildings or the Department of Parks. But the city as a totality has to get this one right. And I think that Parks, as the owner of the building, has a real responsibility to think about the Merchant House Museum as a thing itself, and that it's insufficient to just say, oh, well, they'll do what DOB requires. As the property owner, I think they have to think about what might happen to the Merchant House Museum and what would they do as owners to best protect it. So I hope we can get some engagement from Parks.
Thanks for the questions. No surprises there, but a helpful synthesis of questions that were raised at the public hearing.
Yep. And 3122, 3136, Victory Boulevard is also waiting some comprehensive responses as well.
And I think with that, the review session is over. Thank you.
Yes, the time is 2:58 p.m.